Hello everyone, this is Naerina from 40k Theories, and welcome to this new episode of 40k Lore for Newcomers. For this episode, nominated on Patreon by Darks, we will be taking a brief look at the Hexagrammaton of the Dark Angels Legion. This video will be a brief overview for certain events that may be explored in greater depth within additional videos within the future. So, without further ado, let's begin.
On Caliban we hunted monsters, foul of both heart and hue, and we learned to show them no mercy or respite. While we now hunt monsters of a more treacherous breed, whose familiar guise hides the foulness of their hearts, those lessons we learned on Caliban still hold true, and our blades remain sharp.
The Hexagrammaton, also known informally as the Six Divine Ways of the Six Wings, were specialist formations utilized by the Dark Angels Legion of the Legionis Astartes during the time of the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. These formations, known as the Deathwing, Ravenwing, Dreadwing, Firewing, Stormwing, and Ironwing, were developed by the Primarch Lionel Johnson following his reunion with this legion as part of various reforms and general restructuring designed to incorporate the teachings and methodologies of Caliban, the Primarch's adoptive homeworld. Prior to these reformations, there existed at least 18 different hosts within the initial organizational structure of the First Legion, with each host having been designed with a specific purpose in mind, such as frontline assault, siege warfare, or infiltration, amongst many others. While some of these hosts would ultimately be deemed redundant by the Lion, others would go on to serve as the foundations for the wings of the Hexagrammaton, with some elements of their original design persevering even after the introduction of Calibanite elements and traditions. The members of each wing were evenly distributed amongst the First Legion's various battle companies, ensuring that each company had access to a number of specialist units to account for almost any situation upon the battlefield. This was possible due in part to the fact that the Hexagrammaton itself existed outside the formal command structure of the Legion itself. The commanding lieutenants of each wing were appointed by their peers as opposed to a commanding officer. Such was the importance of these wing lieutenants that they would even serve as aides and advisors to Lionel Johnson himself. Because of the unique structure of the Hexagrammaton, a lieutenant was at times able to request the specialist services of a particular wing, in addition to utilizing any other warriors under his command. Should such a request be made and accepted, members of the wing would, where possible, abandon their current duties in order to answer the summons of their respective lieutenant. Today, only 2 of the 6 wings of the Hexagrammaton continue to endure within the modern-day Dark Angels, while they fulfill the roles of the chapter's 1st and 2nd companies. The exact fate of the remaining 4 wings is unknown, with theories ranging from them simply being deemed as obsolete or otherwise incompatible with the structure mandated by the Codex Astartes to them serving as the foundations for a number of Dark Angel's successor chapters. Whatever the case, the spirit of the Hexagrammaton endures, even if only in a drastically reduced capacity.
Empires, monuments, and legends are built by those who are merely victorious. We were born to kill, not to build. We are not idle enough to leave monuments, and we leave no work of the enemy intact to spawn legends. We are the First Legion, and he that follows in our wake is death.
The 6 wings comprising the Hexagrammaton were known, within what imperial records were permitted to acknowledge their existence, as the Stormwing, Deathwing, Ravenwing, Ironwing, Dreadwing, and Firewing. Each wing specialized in a different battlefield role. The first and largest of these wings was the Stormwing, itself not only consisting of the majority of the First Legion's infantry, but also incorporating numerous training battalions for freshly inducted recruits, as well as multiple mobile ordnance units for battlefield support. The Stormwing also contained the highest percentage of apothecaries within the Legion, so much so that the rank and title of Master of the Stormwing was at one point synonymous with that of Master of the Apothecarian, although the shared title would eventually fall out of favor during the later years of the Great Crusade. Despite being the largest wing of the Hexagrammaton, the Stormwing was supposedly one of the most difficult and stringent for warriors to ascend the ranks and gain access to the wing's inner circle, with those attempting to do so needing to complete a series of increasingly taxing trials. The most elite wing of the Hexagrammaton was the Death Wing, one of 2 surviving wings that continue to endure within the modern-day Dark Angels chapter. During the days of the Great Crusade, the role of the Deathwing was primarily line-breaking, and it was famed for their skill, dauntlessness, and marksmanship even prior to the reformation of the hosts. The most elite warriors of the Deathwing were often tasked to serve as bodyguards for many of the Legion's officers, including Lionel Johnson himself. These particular warriors, known as the Companions, would swear an oath to lay down their lives in defense of the officers they were assigned to. Should a Deathwing companion take a blow meant for their charge and survive, then a portion of their armor would be recolored from black to bone white as a mark of honor and a symbol of their selfless devotion to their vows. Today, the Deathwing serves as the first company for the modern-day Dark Angels chapter, as well as their various successors. It is only upon being inducted into the ranks of the Deathwing, itself no small feat, that a battle brother learns the truth regarding both the destruction of their ancestral homeworld of Caliban and the existence of the Fallen. Those members of the original Dark Angels Legion that turned traitor during the course of the civil war known as the Horus Heresy. Prior to the onset of the Ultima founding and the introduction of Primaris Marines, the Deathwing Company were unique amongst the Adeptus Astartes in that it was comprised entirely of warriors clad in Terminator armor, as opposed to utilizing a mix of Terminator and power-armored veteran squads. While the current incarnation of the Deathwing will also fulfill the roles of line breakers and bodyguards for chapter officers, they are also tasked with hunting down and capturing members of the Fallen, and will take often extreme measures in order to capture their quarry, even going as far as abandoning their allies or giving up key battlefield objectives in order to do so. The only other wing of the Hexagrammaton that endures into the present day is that of the Raven Wing. Of all the Hexagrammaton, the Raven Wing underwent the most changes following Lionel Johnson's reunion with his legion. Inspired by the Calibanite Knights from the Order of the Raven, who were quite possibly the most fearsome mounted warriors upon the entire world, the Raven Wing specializes in fast attack, reconnaissance, and skirmish warfare. To aid in this, the Raven Wing make extensive use of bikes and skimmers, such as land speeders, as well as their own division of light aircraft. While the Raven Wing of today continued to heavily utilize bikes, the Raven Wing of the Great Crusade also boasted a substantial complement of infantry units, which specialized in the use of drop pods and orbital assault. The modern-day incarnation of the Raven Wing, which now serves as the chapter's second company, continues to specialize in the use of fast attack and strike and fade tactics. Not only this, but the Raven Wing, much like the Death Wing, will also be utilized in the chapter's hunt for the Fallen, often being used as the chapter's proverbial hunting dogs to pursue and cut off the retreat of any fallen angels uncovered. By contrast, the warriors of the Hexagrammaton's Iron Wing served as the Legion's siege specialists. Perhaps the most unsubtle wing of the entire Legion, it favored the extensive use of heavy weaponry, tanks, and artillery to bring down enemy fortifications and destroy priority battlefield targets. Not only did the Iron Wing consist of the majority of the Legion's armored vehicles, but it also boasted high numbers of Terminator squads, Breacher squads, and Dreadnoughts. In fact, the Iron Wing contained the highest concentration of Terminators not just within the ranks of the Dark Angels, but of all Space Marine legions, with the Iron Wing even having access to a number of rare experimental patterns of tactical Dreadnought armor. Disturbingly, the Iron Wing also made use of Exindio-class battle automata, constructs which were little more than the neutered remnants of the legendary Men of Iron, a series of true artificial intelligences, the use of which had long since been outlawed throughout human space since the end of the Dark Age of technology millennia prior. It was due in part of this flagrant use of forbidden technologies that the Iron Wing became despised by the tech priests of the Martian Mechanicum, with only the hosts of the Dread Wing being more reviled by comparison. The Dread Wing were themselves perhaps the most feared wing of the entire Hexagrammaton due to their specialization in the use of annihilation-grade weaponry. the Dreadwing were synonymous with complete and total obliteration, making extensive use of destroyed squads and specialist morated marines to conduct what were considered by many to be little more than massacres and purges. It was also noted that the warriors of the Dreadwing were not only believed to have the most morbid of dispositions, but that the dreadnoughts of this particular wing were the most mentally unstable, having been driven to the brink of insanity by the lifetime of horrors they were forced to inflict and endure. In a manner similar to the previously mentioned Iron Wing, the Dreadwing also had their own cohorts of battle automata, though instead of utilizing true artificial intelligences, the robots of the Dreadwing were a specialist type of Castellax known collectively as the Black Watch. Following the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, the Dreadwing would also come to include members of the Legion's Librarius, psychically sensitive individuals that were capable of harnessing the energies of the warp in order to manifest a number of powerful abilities. While the use of Psychers was officially outlawed following the Council of Nicaea, the Lion refused to be caught without one of his legion's most powerful assets during the, at the time, greatest civil war the galaxy had ever seen, and instead chose to defy the terms of the edict, reasoning that any weapon that could bring victory should be utilized, and that any consequences for doing so can be paid for later down the line. The final and smallest wing of the Hexagrammaton was that of the Fire Wing. Of all the wings, the Fire Wing would undergo the least amount of changes following the Dark Angels' reunion with their Primarch, and were widely considered the Legion's, for lack of a better term, hidden blade. While the other wings focused on defeating their foes upon the battlefield, or sought to obliterate, annihilate, or otherwise destroy the enemy, the Fire Wing, by contrast, preferred to make use of spies and assassins in order to learn of their opponent's weaknesses and strike accordingly, often by eliminating key targets within the enemy command structure in order to cause confusion and disorder within their ranks. To aid in this, the Fire Wing made use of troops known as the Enigmati, who would operate in small cabals in order to cause as much havoc as possible, such as by disrupting supply lines or assassinating enemy leaders. Somewhat uniquely, members of the Fire Wing would be drawn exclusively from the legionaries from either Terra itself or from one of its surrounding colonies, as opposed to those Dark Angels that had been recruited upon Caliban. This, as a result, would result in members of the Fire Wing developing a close friendship with warriors from the Lunar Wolves Legion, due to the Lunar Wolves also recruiting from a number of the same Terran colonies. However, following the outbreak of the Horus Heresy, this friendship would turn to bitter hatred, as the Lunar Wolves, now known as the Sons of Horus, would turn traitor and rebel against the Emperor and the Imperium. And that concludes this edition of 40k Lore for Newcomers. If you like this video, consider supporting us on Patreon for more content. To those who are new to 40k, we hope you learned something. So, leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.